Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Kristy Sumner, a paranormal investigator and co-owner of Soul Sisters Paranormal Team. Welcome, Kristy.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you having me tonight.
I'm glad to have you on. I'm interested to hear your stories and your adventures.
Well, we certainly have a lot of those, so I enjoy telling them.
Okay. Well, for those who've never heard of you, can you give us a little bit of your background? Who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is actually Dr. Kristy Sumner, and I'm the founder of Soul Sisters Paranormal, and it's an all-female paranormal investigation team that I formed with my twin sister, our younger sister, and then two female family friends. And we go around the country visiting historic and reportedly haunted locations, and we give a detailed narrative of the history of those locations, and then also give a brief synopsis of any of the paranormal activity that we found at those locations.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I apologize. I said you're a co-owner. You are the owner.
I'm the founder. I'm one of the founders. So it was
Okay.
actually founded by my twin sister and I. Yep.
Okay. So you investigate alleged or suspected paranormal activity. Is that the way it works?
Yes, sir. So there are locations around the country that we'll call them commercial locations that actually tout the fact that they have a haunted past or a haunted present. And so they allow people like myself to go in and conduct paranormal investigations. So that's the commercial side of what we do. And then we also have a website where people can contact us. And so we investigate private businesses and private residences and homes as well. Those are the ones that we really don't publicize. So we do that for the homeowner or the business owner. So we actually have those two type of what we call investigations that we do.
Okay. Now, do you normally find paranormal activity on the places you go to?
I'd say probably about 75% of the locations that we go to, we've had something happen or we've captured something that we consider unexplained. We all come from a very research-minded background, so we all have advanced degrees. So, example, I've got a PhD, my twin has a PhD, we've got two lawyers on the team, and a master's holder on the team as well. So we really go into all of these locations with a healthy skepticism, and we try to find things that are naturally occurring or environmental that could explain some of the paranormal activity. So, for example, light pollution, noise, airplane traffic, train traffic, something like that. And then once we control for all of those things, then what we're left with is what we call unexplained. So, for example, if we go into a former Civil War hospital and there are 5 females in that hospital, but yet I capture a man's voice on my voice recorder, I call that unexplained because I have no explanation for what is causing that male's voice.
Yeah. So you told a little bit about your team, but can you give me some more details? I mean, how did y'all get together and what makes it all work? How does it
Sure.
all get together?
Absolutely. So we actually started as a girls' trip. My sisters and I live in different parts of the country. So we would routinely get together in different cities. You know, we'd fly up and meet for a weekend and just kind of get together and hang out. And we do that a few times a year. And in 2013, we actually decided to go to Moundsville, West Virginia. And in Moundsville is where the former West Virginia State Penitentiary is located. So we actually had a friend of the family who sat on the board of the West Virginia State Penitentiary. So he said, you know, while y'all are here, why don't you stay the night in the prison and see if you can talk to any of the resident spirits that are there? So we absolutely jumped on that chance. And so we went in, we stayed the night in the prison, and we had a couple of voice recorders, a couple of digital cameras, very rudimentary equipment at that time. And what we came away with were things that we couldn't explain. We had footsteps when we knew that there was nobody in the hall with us. We were capturing voices when we knew that there was nobody else there. And so we left that experience really wanting to delve into this further. So we decided to form our team, Soul Sisters Paranormal, and we decided just to make these girls trips into paranormal investigations. And so when we started doing that, our families started saying, you know, what's it like? What do you see there? What do you find there? So because of those questions, we started to put together our videos. And so now we document these historical locations and all of the paranormal activity that we find.
Okay. So what is your method?
We actually go in again with a very scientific approach. And so what we do is before we even go to the location, we'll really delve into the history of that location. So we spend a lot of time researching state archives, national archives, the Library of Congress, any libraries in the area to really get a good feel of the location, what happened in its history, any, pertinent events that occurred at the location, trying to get a real background, in-depth background research on that. So then once we have that research, we'll go in and we'll take a day tour of the location first, because we want to scout out anything that could, again, influence that investigation. So we look for things like street lights, where are the doors located, where are the windows located, are there any dogs in the area, kids, anything like that, that when we're in the location at night, if we hear that noise or see something, we can pass it off as something environmental, not paranormal. So we also look for places during the day. We also look for places where we can put our cameras that we leave stationary during the night. So then the night of the investigation, we'll go in and we'll set up that stationary equipment. So we have night vision video cameras and voice recorders that we leave in different parts of the building or on the property that we're investigating, because we want to have eyes and ears on as much as we can for the night. And then we'll go in and we'll actually do what we call EVP sessions, which is basically us sitting in a dark room, asking questions into the air and hoping for some type of a response. And a majority of the time we get responses, but not audibly. We'll catch them on the voice recorders. And when we go back and listen to the audio and video footage that we capture, we'll hear it. But there have been some instances where we actually hear it in the moment. Like, for example, I'll hear my name being called, or I'll hear a door slam or footsteps in the moment. And so we'll do that investigation for anywhere between 8 to 15 to 24 hours in some cases. And then after that investigation, we'll collect all of our things. And then we go through all of the audio footage and all of the video footage that we captured that night. So for example, if I've got 10 voice recorders running for 10 hours, I'm listening to 100 hours of audio for that investigation. And then after that, we will collect anything that we find that's unexplainable to us. And we'll again put it in a video and really summarize the history that we found, the history of the location, and then add in the paranormal evidence that we found.
Okay, so you have movie cameras and you have EVP things or whatever you call. What else do you use
we
equipment-wise?
we do have some specialized equipment. The best piece of equipment that we actually have that we take with us are our voice recorders. So just, $30 off of Amazon, we have voice recorders and we leave them again in different parts of the building or the location that we're at. And we all carry one with us as well. And so because for us, EVPs or electronic voice phenomena, those are the things that to us are the most unexplainable. So again, if I'm capturing a male's voice or a child's voice or another female's voice that is not in our group, that's very, very hard for me to debunk. It's very hard for me to explain. So we all carry those voice recorders. And then again, we have night vision video cameras that we'll leave around the location. And then we also have different pieces of equipment that have been modified to some extent for paranormal investigations. So for example, we have a small AM/FM radio that's called a spirit box. And what it does, it's been modified to very quickly sweep through frequencies. So when you turn it on, it sounds like as it's going through the AM/FM frequencies. And the idea is that spirits can use that white noise between the frequencies to communicate with us. And so we've used that very successfully in a lot of these locations. We do have some specialized cameras. We don't have movie cameras per se. A lot of the film that we put together is images from our stationary video cameras or our body cameras that we wear. And sometimes our phones will film on our phones. But we don't really have any specialized cameras per se that film us. And let's see, some other pieces of equipment that we have are things that are designed to really measure energy or electromagnetic energy. So for example, if we go into a jail that we know has no power to it, but yet we have these devices that are designed to measure electricity and they're going off and alarming, again, that's very compelling to us because there should be no reason why they're doing that. So
Yeah.
we have pieces of equipment like that. And then we also take in what we call trigger items. And these are going to be items that are very germane to the location or germane to the history of that location or an event. So, for example, when we went to Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, one of the locations there during the Revolutionary War was used as a solitary confinement cell for traitors of the war. And so when we went there, we thought to ourselves, what would somebody in solitary confinement want? So we took some water, we took some bread, we took a cigarette, and we left it in that area in order to kind of trigger a response, saying, we left these for you. If you acknowledge that, or if you see it, can you give us an acknowledgement that you're here? So we're very big on trigger items. And so that really kind of rounds out some of the things that we take on our investigations.
Okay. It sounds very in-depth.
It's interesting. We really do have what we consider our formula down. All paranormal investigation teams will investigate differently and they have their own styles. But for us, it's one of those things that after the first 2 or 3 investigations, we really kind of got our system down as to how we investigate and how, we capture our evidence and stuff like that. So it does sound pretty in depth, but for us, once we get into a location, it's really a pretty easy setup and then a breakdown at the end of the investigation.
Yeah. Now, where's your headquarters? Where are you located?
I'm actually in Florida, but I do a lot of traveling. So right now I'm actually in Tennessee. My twin sisters in Florida as well. Our younger sisters in Virginia. We have one in Colorado. So we're all spread out, as I said before. But for me personally, I live in Florida.
Yeah. And how long have y'all been doing this now?
We started investigating in 2013. We really formalized the group, and by formalized, I mean we got our name, we got our logo, we had our theme song created. So we really did that at the end of 2014, and so then after that, we really started getting our videos out and kind of getting I guess you would say a following on Facebook and YouTube of those that wanted to watch our videos. So around 2013, 2014.
Okay. Now, would you say you folks are the experts or just run-of-the-mill paranormal investigators, or how do you see yourselves?
Well, Steve, I'll tell you, I don't consider anybody in this community an expert. I just don't think that this is something that you can become an expert in. I do say that we have experience. We've been to probably 2 dozen of the most haunted, reportedly haunted locations in the country. So we do have that experience under our belts, but we're always learning. We're always talking to different groups. We're collaborating with different groups on different things. So we're always getting new techniques. And like I said, this is a field that we're all working in theory. It's nothing that can ever be proven. And so for us to say, we're experts, or for somebody to call themselves an expert, I think that's very disingenuous, because it's not something that can really there's no end measurable, if you will. We're never
Yeah.
going to find the real answer out until we die. So like I said, we can find things that we call unexplainable, but I don't think it'll ever be the end all be all answer to what we're looking for.
Yeah. Now, you say people call you and ask you to come to investigate? Do they pay you to do this? Is this a business?
They do call us, but this is not a business per se. Everything that we do is self-funded, and so we don't take any fee or anything. Basically, for us, it's a learning experience. So will go in and we want to help people that perceive a problem in their house. And I say perceive because we always believe people when they contact us. One of the phrases that's commonly used is they'll contact us and say, don't think I'm crazy. And we don't think anybody's crazy, but there could be things that are explainable that they just don't really think to think about, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So for example, we had a business owner call us, and he was convinced that his place was haunted. So he had a brick and mortar location. It had a glass storefront. He had glass display cases, some mirrors on the wall, and he had these night vision video cameras in different parts of the store. And at night they would go on and off. So he was convinced that there was a spirit messing with it, and he wanted us to come in and investigate and really validate what he was experiencing. So we went in for the night and we did an investigation, and we weren't feeling anything. We didn't get anything on our equipment. Nothing to us indicated paranormal. So we left some of our night vision video cameras there that night, and the next morning I asked him, I said, did your cameras go off? And he said, yes, it was very active. My cameras were going off all night. And so I said, give me the timestamps and I'm going to reference that with ours. And when I did that, what I found was the way his storefront was positioned, it was on a highway that had a high rate of U-turn traffic. So when the cars would make that U-turn, the headlights would bounce in through the window, hit the mirror and into his night vision video camera, which essentially blinded the night vision, turned it off and turned it back on. And so I said to him, I think if you just change the mirror angle or change the camera angle, I think your quote unquote haunting will go away. And it did. So we always go in again with that healthy skepticism. And if we can find things that are environmental, that's what we're going to present to our client. But there have been a lot of instances where we do find things that we can't explain. And so in that case, we'll talk to the client, decide what they want to do, how they want to handle it and how they want to proceed. And we'll follow their lead on what they want to do.
Yeah. I've always thought old prisons and insane asylums are fascinating. Are they particularly creepy when you go in them?
They really are. And the fact that we're an all-female team, I think kind of lends to the fact that we get a little bit more evidence, if you will, in some of those locations, because we don't go in with bravado. We don't go in with chest pumping or anything like that. We actually go in with the intent of telling the story of any entity that's in the location. So when we go to jails and prisons, it is a little bit darker, if you will. There's a little bit different presence when we go into those versus a hospital or something like that. So we've investigated Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee. We've been there a couple of times, and that place is fascinating because we always seem to get males talking to us. We get footsteps running past us. We actually captured a shadow figure on camera. We all saw it in the moment, and at the same time, the camera's there, and we catch it running across the room. So that was a very interesting location. West Virginia State Penitentiary is a great location. We've been there several times. And then the smaller county jails, those that, just had your run of the mill, people that were shoplifting or domestic violence or drunk or something like that. They always have some interesting activity in them as well. So to your point, yes, jails and prisons and to some extent insane asylums are very different with how we approach our investigation with those.
Yeah. Now, do you all ever feel like your lives are in danger when you're at these places?
No, sir, not by anything paranormal. I'm more afraid of the living sometimes than I am of the dead. But all of us, we are licensed to carry. So when we go to these locations, we do have handguns with us. And so we have that level of protection when we go to these locations. But as far as the paranormal, no, we've never felt anything that we would consider dark or threatening to us personally. We've never come out of a location and think something has followed us home. We've never been hit or scratched or anything like that. So again, I do think it's all in the approach. As I said before, we don't go in and say things like throw the chair across the room or we're not going to believe you're here. That's really not how we operate. We don't do any provoking. We don't do anything like seances or Ouija boards or anything like that. We really do go in with that legitimate mindset of telling a story. And that's how when we first enter a property, we'll always say, I'm Kristy, this is Jenny. We're here to tell your story. That's what we want to do. If you want to talk to us, great. If you don't, great. But we're not here to threaten you in any way. And I think because of that approach, and again, the fact that I think females have a different sense of empathy, I think that tends to allow us to get different types of evidence than an all male group or a group that's going to go in there and just really do some provoking.
Yeah. Now, do you ever take any curiosity seekers along with you that just want the experience?
Really, we have not done that. We have offered to have some podcast hosts or radio hosts come with us. We haven't really had anybody take us up on that offer yet. But it's one of those things where we do want to make sure that we're investigating with somebody who has the right intentions. You know, we don't want somebody that's going to go in just for a jump scare or to say that they've, you know, got creeped out in this haunted prison. You know, we do really want to investigate with those people that, in my mind, go in with what I call the right mindset, i.e., they want to be there for the historical experience first, and then the paranormal second. And there's those people that won't be disappointed if we don't capture anything paranormal.
Yeah.
That's why we're very particular about who we collaborate with. You know, there's been other paranormal teams that want to collaborate with us, and we're very particular on who we take with us. Again, because we are putting ourselves in situations where, you know, we are in abandoned places. And so we want to know that person is genuine, and in it for what we consider the right reasons.
Yeah. So what's the creepiest place you visited so far?
I would say that was the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida, and that's about an hour's west, or about an hour's west of Gainesville, Florida. And this was a small county jail. It was opened in 1928. It was in operation until 1968, and after that, it sat abandoned for several decades, and it really went into disrepair. It was one of these locations that, because it was abandoned, was used as a drug place, a lot of drug activity there. And so when the current owners purchased it, they allowed paranormal investigators to go in. And so I've investigated there a couple of times. And the first time was with my friend Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations. She's another female paranormal investigator. And she and I were the only two people on the property. And when we talked to the owner about it, she said, you know, I highly recommend you carry your guns with you if you have your guns with you. And so we did that. And that's the type of location we were in. And so we went into the building. It's a smaller building. It's got 4 cells on the first floor and then 4 cells on the second floor. And then it's got a small jailer's cottage that's connected via a doorway. So a very small footprint. But when we first went in, we really weren't, you know, capturing anything or really feeling anything paranormal. And so Miranda said, I wonder if they think we're law enforcement because we have our guns with us. And so we decided just to take our guns off to just kind of say we're not law enforcement. And so I took my gun off and I put it down on the cot, and because there was a cot in the cell. And as Miranda's taking hers off, she takes it off her belt and she's laying it down and she said, I'm putting this down nice and slow. And a voice behind us said, good. And there was nobody standing there. And after that, the night was on. We captured shadow figures. We were hearing bangs, hearing knocks. We heard a voice saying, get out. We were, again, capturing the different anomalies on all of our equipment. So I would say that was probably the creepiest, but also the one that, if I could call it a perfect investigation, was a perfect investigation, because every piece of equipment we had running that night was validating every other piece of equipment. And that's very rare in paranormal investigations. So it was a creepy experience, but also a fascinating one at the same time.
Yeah. And Brushy Mountain, you mentioned Brushy Mountain. It's a very infamous prison. It was a very violent prison. So was it especially creepy?
It was, and to your point, it was a violent prison. It was a maximum security prison. Brushy Mountain opened in 1896, and it was in operation until 2009. And the reason that it opened was because the state needed money after the Civil War, and so it used prisoners to mine the coal for the state. And so that's why it originally opened. So you have these prisoners, you know, early in the early 1900s that are being forced to mine this coal for the state, and they were under very brutal conditions. So that led to, you know, a lot of reform in the 1960s and the 1970s. But still, it was a very violent place to be.
Yeah.
So because of that, it is, in my mind, extremely active. We've investigated there twice. The first night, it was just my twin sister and I, and we were capturing footsteps. We heard banging and knocks. We were capturing males' voices in all of the cell blocks, because we had cameras and voice recorders in each of those. And so it was a very active night for us. And then the second time we went, a year later, we went back with Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. So it was my twin sister, Jenny, another investigator of ours, Kim, Miranda, and her camera guy, Josh, and myself. So there was 5 of us on the property that night. And so we were in the gymnasium, and so it was complete darkness. There was no light pollution at all in the gymnasium. So we had several pieces of equipment that have lights on them, like indicator lights. So we had a glow in the dark balloon and two other pieces of equipment that just have these red indicator lights on them. So we were all five of us were standing about 15 feet away in a semicircle around these pieces of equipment in the middle of the gym. And I was watching, everybody was watching on those light arrays, and something runs across and it cuts off my line of sight. It runs from the right to the left. And I said, holy shit. I said, did anybody else see that? And Miranda just happened to be holding a piece of equipment called an SLS camera, which generally speaking is a camera connected to an iPad that when it perceives something human in the room, it puts that as a stick figure on the screen. So at the same time I'm seeing this shadow run across, Miranda's picking this thing up on her SLS camera, and her camera guy happens to be filming it. And as he pans the camera up to look at the items in the middle of the room, the shadow figure runs back across from now going left to right, and we all see it. And we captured that on camera. And that was just an amazing experience because we have no explanation as to what that shadow was. There was nothing in there, nothing in that room that could cause that shadow. So that was an amazing experience. And in addition to that, we were capturing slaps on the wall. We heard footsteps. We heard male voices that night. That we actually had a stationary night vision video camera in one of the cell blocks, and we actually, because it was such an active night in other places, we never got to that cell block. So the entire night the camera's running by itself, but there were rocks being thrown at it from up above, so you could see these rocks just coming down and trying to pelt the night vision video camera, and it went on all night. And so that was extremely interesting to us. So yeah, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary just has a very rich history, but also a very cool paranormal present.
Yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned a cameraman, so you do take men with you. It's not just all women or?
Well, on that instance, it was we were collaborating with Miranda Young, and so her show is called Ghost Biker Explorations. So the way she films is she's a solo investigator with a cameraman. So it was her and her camera guy, and then the three from Soul Sisters Paranormal. So in that instance, yes, he was with us because he was filming Miranda.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned people call you and ask you to come. Do you go to all the locations you're invited to, or are there too many for you to go to?
We've been to numerous ones. For us, it does come down to logistics and travel schedules. And so, for example, we had somebody from the Philippines, and we just can't get to the Philippines. So in that instance, if we can track down another paranormal team in that location, we will contact them on behalf of the client and say, we can't logistically get there, but can I introduce you to this person and you take over this case? So for us, we try to get to as many as we can to help as many people as we can, but sometimes logistically it's not possible.
Yeah. Now, you say you go to some locations twice. Now, do you get different results both times or?
We have, like you said, we've been to Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary twice, and it was interesting because we were able to take what we learned from that first investigation and really apply it to the second one. So, for example, on the first investigation, we were in what's called the hole, and this is where they had their solitary confinement. So it's subterranean, and there's 5 cells. And once you were in those cells and they shut those doors, complete darkness, no light pollution whatsoever. So we were the first investigation, Jenny and I were down in that area, and we heard footsteps running up and down above us, which would have been the chapel at the time when the prison was in operation. So there were footsteps running back and forth above us, and there's nobody else in the building. And so we were talking to the owners, and they said, "Oh yeah, there's a guy by the name of his name is George, but he went by G, and that's common, for him to run across. People have seen him, they've heard his footsteps." And so the next time we went back, we were able to sit down and actually address G and say, we heard you last time. Can you communicate with us? And we actually, we captured his voice several times on voice recorder, and we believe that was him. So it was in response to the questions we were asking based on our first investigation. So we get experiences that are similar sometimes, but we also get those that are completely unique.
Yeah. Now, I watched a couple of videos on your website today,
Well, thank
and they were interesting, but I have to admit, when you said you heard people say exact words, I didn't hear that.
And there's sometimes that some of our audience won't, and so how the way we do our evidence review is, so for example, we have a voice recorder, and I'll listen to that voice recorder. I'll listen to the entire hour, all of the hours that it recorded. And so when I hear something that I can't explain, or I think is something that I can't explain, I'll clip it and I'll send it to everybody else on the team. I won't say anything about it. I'll just say, listen to this. And then they'll come back and say, yes, I hear something, or yes, I hear this word. And we try to come up with a consensus of, one, if we hear something, and two, what it is saying. And so, there are some instances where, you'll hear waterfall and I hear watermelon, but we're not going to come up with the same exact word every time, just because of how we hear, but we try to get as close as we can to what we're hearing, all five of us, and then that's what we put out there. Now when we're listening to it, we're listening with headphones and the volume up to max level, and sometimes that doesn't translate very well over YouTube. So I always recommend putting on headphones to listen to our videos. But those things that we put out there are things that we all heard, and the consensus that we came up with what it was saying.
Okay, okay. Now, you do go in with an open mind. You don't go in with any predetermined suppositions. You don't assume you're going to find paranormal activity, correct?
Correct. And I just think that for us, that's just how we operate. Like I said before, the fact that we're able to stay in this historic location, and have that very tactile experience with history, that's our number one driving factor. If we come away with something that we can't explain, that to us is bonus. But even if we go to a location and we don't capture anything unexplainable to us, we're still going to put together that historical narrative, because we feel that our audience needs to know that history, of that location, because not a lot of people have the opportunity to go to the locations that we go to. So yes, we do have an open mind. We do, like I said before, we do have that historical background, that historical knowledge, because we do research beforehand, but we don't go in with the preconceived notion of, we are going to capture something tonight, we are going to, provoke something into talking to us. That's not how we operate. So if we capture something, like I said, that to us is just bonus.
Yeah. Now, do you have a dedicated skeptic on your team that just goes out of his or her way to debunk everything and not believe anything?
Not so much a dedicated skeptic. Like I said, it's one of those where we all go in with that healthy skepticism of the location. And if we hear something, if we're going through evidence review and we hear something that we can't explain, we're cross-referencing every other camera, to figure out where we were when that occurred. We all wear body cameras, so I have a timestamp of where everybody is on the location. So even if we split up, I know where everybody is when we capture something on film or on voice recorder. And if we're anywhere near the area, then it automatically goes to, that was probably one of us, so we're not going to count that as unexplainable. But if I can verify that nobody's in that area and it could not be one of us, then that's what we call unexplainable. So like I said, we all go in with kind of that skepticism, if you will, and we are more apt to throw things out than put things in as unexplainable.
Yeah. So what field is your PhD? Is that in paranormal activity? Is there such a thing?
No, sir. My PhD is in public affairs with an emphasis on criminal justice. So my background is actually in aviation security with an emphasis on biometrics for airport access control.
Okay. So these ghost paranormal shows that are on TV, are they fake or are they real? Or a little bit of both?
They're the way television shows work, and if you're a fan of one of those, you have to understand that they're there for the sensationalism. Their entire reason for being is to get an audience base, to get advertising dollars. So when you go in and watch one of these and you have that in your mind, you have to know that there has to be some type of sensationalism going into these locations.
Yeah.
Now that being said, they operate similar to what we do, but they also have a budget that I can't match. I don't have a camera crew. I don't have a tech crew. I don't have a sound crew. And a lot of the times they're in these locations filming for a week where we get it for 8 hours. So in that aspect, it is a little bit different. I'm not going to disparage any television show or any other team, but I do think that when you realize there is that sensationalism factor, then you realize it has to be a little bit different than what we do.
Yeah. So y'all do this as a hobby then, it's not your profession,
Correct.
correct?
It's not a profession. No,
Yeah.
we all have all have different jobs.
Okay.
So this to us is really a labor of love. And one of those things, like I said before, where we get together several times a year, enjoy each other's company as a girls' weekend, and do something unique. That being said, it's also one of those things that because we do it and we have our name associated with it, we're going to be as professional as we can with it. So
Yeah.
that's why our videos, that's why, we have our logo, that's why we have our theme song, because we realize we're dealing with a subculture, right? So when you tell somebody you're a paranormal investigator, they either look at you like that you have two heads, or they want to tell you their ghost story.
Yeah.
But either way, they look at you a little bit differently. Like, we're dealing with somebody that's in a subculture. So for us, if we can elevate that and give it a more professional feel and a professional look, that's what we want to do, because we want to show our audience that you can have fun with this. You can highlight the historical aspect of this, and you can find things that are unexplainable. Now, do I believe that I'm going to convince anybody of what I'm finding is fact? I don't. I think that trying to convince everybody that watches our video that what we're finding is true is like trying to convince somebody that my religion is correct, and I'm not going to do that. So the way we approach those skeptics and cynics is watch our videos for the history. If you don't believe in the paranormal, we hope to give you a very historical experience in that regard, and we hope that the history will carry the episode. But we're not trying to convince anybody of anything. What we're doing is putting together this narrative and saying, in this moment, in this time, at this night, we had this many people, we set up this equipment, and what we're left with is unexplained. But if somebody wants to come to me and say, well, I think it's this, then I want to have that dialogue, because we want to put out things that is real. We want to put out things that are professional. And so for us, it is one of those things where it is a hobby, but it's also something that, because we're associated with it's going to be the most professional thing that we can put out there.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you and your sister had PhDs certainly adds some legitimacy to it.
It is a little bit different, yes, sir. It's something that, not a lot of other teams can say that they have, but for me, it's not one of those things that I feel makes us better or greater than any other paranormal team. There's so many paranormal teams out there that I respect for what they're doing and the way that they approach their investigations and the way they approach their historical evidence. But if it does add that legitimacy, then I think that elevates the entire community.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot of them these days. There's tons of them just in this area. I
Mhm.
don't know how good they are or what the results are, but there are plenty of them.
Yes, sir. I do think that there has been an increase in paranormal, what I'll call paranormal tourism, in the last several years.
Yeah.
Obviously, television shows have contributed to that, but the way I look at it, this is something we're all going to experience, right? Nobody is leaving Earth alive, and so I think everybody has that desire to figure out what's next, or try to come up with a belief system that they can hold on to really understand what's coming next. So I think that's the reason why the paranormal shows are so popular, and why what we do is so intriguing to a lot of people.
You consider it a spiritual quest?
And not so much for me personally, not so much a spiritual quest. I do think, and that's a great question. It is a quest for answers. The more we do this, the more I do believe that there will be something next. I'll say that I'm a Christian. I do believe in God. I do believe that there is a heaven. I don't believe, I diverge a little bit from the biblical teachings and the fact that I don't believe that ascension happens immediately after we die. I think there are reasons why spirits or souls can stay closer to earth. But as far as a spiritual quest, that's not really how I look at it. I think for me, it's more of a quest to showcase again that historical perspective and why it's so important in America, and why we're doing this.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you visit these places in the daytime first. I've
Yes, sir.
always wondered, why do the paranormal investigators go to these places at night? Wouldn't it be a lot safer in the daytime?
Yes, sir. And we have investigated in the daytime. So if somebody were to say, oh, ghosts only come out at night, that's not true. Some of our best investigations have been in the daytime. For the commercial locations, most of them have day tours. They have daytime operations where they're museums or they're historical sites. So they're operating in normal business hours, and we can only get in after they close. So that's one of the major reasons. And then, one of the other reasons is when we go into some place that is completely dark, you're not relying on your eyes anymore. You rely on your other senses, your auditory senses, your sense of touch, your sense of feel, your sense of smell, all become heightened in these locations. And I think that really kind of adds to the entire experience, because you're not just relying on your eyes, which could be, biased in some cases.
Yeah,
And so, for us, it is one of those things where it's twofold. It's really just finding the time to get in after they close, and then really using those other senses.
yeah. Well, it's certainly fascinating, and I have enjoyed talking to you, Kristy. Thank you very much for taking the time to come on my show. Would you like to tell folks about your website and or your services and how they can get in touch with you and whatever?
Absolutely. And Steve, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Again, my team is called Soul Sisters Paranormal, and our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com. And we're also very active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal. And also, we put a lot of videos on YouTube under Soul Sisters Paranormal. So anything you want to know about us, you can find on any of those three platforms.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Kristy, for being on my show. I do appreciate it. And folks, thanks for tuning in to Holding On with Holder. Please like and share and subscribe and tell a million of your friends about this video and about Soul Sisters. Did I say it right? Soul Sisters Investigation?
Soul Sisters Paranormal. Yes, sir.
Soul Sisters Paranormal. Okay. Thanks again, Kristy, and you have a wonderful evening.
You as well, Steve. Thank you.
Bye bye.